Welcome everyone to this episode of Marriage for Overcomers. Mark DeJesus here with my amazing, beautiful wife, Melissa.
Thank you, babe. It's great to be here.
It's awesome to have you. I'm excited about today's show and today's episode. We're going to continue on some practical ways on how you can begin to deal with the passive issues as well as the control issues that exist in your marriage. Why do we keep talking about this? Well, one of the biggest reasons is that it is a foundational problem that exists in our marriages. The enemy knows if he can do this, he can disrupt the flow. And if he can disrupt the flow, he has ruined or hindered or eroded the ability for you to operate as one and move forward fruitfully together as God designed it. So we've done some areas of heavy hitting. We've plowed through some heavy aspects of this. Today we want to try to get a little more practical. And what does it mean to deal with the passive issues that typically wind up in a man's heart? Not always. We're not making this all in that area. And then the control issues that can typically manifest in the female, although males can be very controlling as well. Yeah. So there's a little bit from both sides we can learn from in our own dynamic, but we found where the battleground tends to lean the most. So we want to get into some practical ways. Are you ready?
I am. Let's do this.
What's the first one you want to mention?
Well, I think it's something that we talk about constantly when we're having conversations with anyone in regards to relationship safety. We have to have safety in the home when we're talking about anything.
Right. We got to get the conversation setting safe.
Yes.
We have to get the arena so that the ultimate goal, I feel like, in marriage, in communication, is the more you are able to talk about together, the more powerful your marriage can become. If there are certain subjects that are like off limits, or every time we go there, it's a bomb fight.
Or I think one of the biggest ones that we see is people are just afraid to talk to each other. Fear is dominating the atmosphere in a lot of homes.
That's right.
You can even take anger out of the picture of maybe someone's going to get angry. We're just scaredy cats to even be truthful.
Right.
And whatever lack of safety is happening there because you just never cultivated it, it's too scary to say, you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, or they may lash out. This atmosphere that's all junked up needs to be cleared. The air needs to be cleared so that we can land safely, in each other's hearts when we're trying to come together to heal these issues. It's huge.
So why don't we move aggressively there? What holds us back? What caused us to go, we're going to do this and we're going to work through it?
I think a couple things. You and I wanted the generations to be different. We wanted healing in our own lives. And our desire to have a healthy and whole marriage was, we had the want. We both had the want to. And I know that there may be a lot of you watching this where you're like, well, it's just me. There needs to be a want to. Now, it's not to say that you can't win your spouse over and there can't be healing, and we know God does wonderfully beautiful, miraculous things within that as we heal ourselves. But at the end of the day, there has to be a want to, and you and I had a very deep want to together, foundationally, of how we were going to move forward in our marriage and what we wanted.
I think it comes down to add to what you're saying, it comes down to a desire to be healthy more than to be comfortable. Because
That's
we want to, if you just leave your marriage by itself, you'll move into the roommate syndrome very easily, but you'll move towards what's comfortable. And passivity for men, control for females, is the dominant, like, default setting we fall into of comfort. It's like I'm just used to a man just not really being emotionally engaged at home, and the mom having to like take the lead in a lot of areas. And she's stressed out. She's overburdened. She can't sit still either. And didn't like that. Maybe see how it affected me. But then when your trials in marriage come up, you go to that default setting.
We don't even realize that we're doing that. We don't even realize that we were set up with a reference, and that's going to be our go-to mode. We don't even know that.
Right. So then when we engage the conversations about this, here's the things that come up. Shame, which causes us to blame. You know, it's the woman you gave me. We start blaming each other. And anytime you get in the blame game, you're not going to go anywhere. And so we have to start recognizing our patterns of defensiveness. When we fight, what are the wounds that are kicking up? that we need to work towards getting to a safer place. I think one of the things that I tried to do in our marriage and still try to do to this day is I was willing to go through the awkward conversations to know that on the other side of this is a better relationship. And maybe I learned that through pastoring. I learned that maybe through even years and years ago in youth ministry, or when I did music ministry later on and was working with creative people that, have sensitivities and don't know how to. I was like, sometimes having that difficult conversation, when you come out on the other side, there's better clarity and you have a better relationship, right?
That's very true.
All relationships cap at the level of like honesty of what you can talk about. If you look at all your friendships and things, like if you have a relationship that didn't work out, it capped out at a level of honesty where it couldn't move forward. And in marriage, you don't really have that option of like, we've capped, so let's move on.
Right.
It's like, no, we got to work this out. We got to get deeper, but we got to get safe. And so I think I thought, well, it's worth it what we're getting to. So let's get awkward. Let's work through these things. Let's clear our hearts and our conscience, put it on the table. And then in the process, learn what's really going on to get to a better place. I think is so important in creating that sense of like, okay, now we feel more and more safety and we can return to this. And it's more enjoyable to have those discussions because I know at the end of the day, our relationship is going to get better. We're going to have something better. But if you don't want that, if you want to just be comfortable, and that's what fuels the passivity, is I got to go to my den. Guys have this thing where it's like, oh, I got enough problems. Can we not deal with that? That's the default setting. And I had to change that. Like, no, your problem is what you're going through is something I walk with you in. Not like I don't carry it for you, in that sense. You have your own things you're going through, but things about the kids, about our life, a family, like we both carry that. And I can't just go, you just deal with it.
You know what, though, as you're talking, because I feel like there's a lot of facets to safety and it happening,
Yep.
right? So even as you're talking, one thing that's glaring at me, I feel like is so huge, and we've had to work really hard at, is honesty. I think a lot of people are just afraid of that because honesty may say, I just can't stand you right now and I don't know what to do and our marriage is at a bad place. People are afraid, and I think, we're going to talk about this a little bit further into the episode on what do you do to create, better conversations and what does that look like. But honesty is huge, and we're so afraid of it because at the end of the day, we're not really even being honest with ourselves.
Right. We're not being honest with ourselves, and we're not able to, we like it if we watch somebody on TV speak without a filter.
Oh, we love it, yeah.
But I'm not saying don't speak with a filter. What I'm saying is that we have this longing to be honest, but we can't.
Yeah.
And we can't because of the level of the quality. It shows the quality of the relationship we have. If you're constantly filtered, then you don't have the higher quality relationship. One thing that helped us is the desire to be healthy. We got to be willing to go through those awkward conversations, but also recognizing like your battles are not you. And we'll do a whole episode on that. Just because you have a sin issue or you had a struggle or you had an experience in the past doesn't mean that's who you are. And so if we can keep that in perspective when we talk about situations, it creates a more shame-free environment.
Yeah.
And now we can get to some of those like really difficult areas of, like you said, where you said, I don't know that I really like you today. We actually said that to each other. And it actually didn't throw us off. No. Where we were like, yeah, I get that. You and I have gotten to the point where, and it takes a lot of hard work, so don't feel like this happened overnight, where you could say something like that, and I go, yeah, I get it. It's been a rough week. There's not as much of that like defensiveness.
Well, I want to make the statement, but it's not that I don't take it personally when you and I are going, because we have had our fights and it's taken us time to get here. But I think one thing that I know for me, I've worked really hard at, I think we both have, and we've had so many conversations, and I've brought this up before. At the end of the day, I think we view each other first as brothers and sisters in Christ. And I'm not like trying to get super spiritual about it. So hear my heart as I'm saying this.
Very true, though.
And it goes back to what you just said, you're not my enemy. And as I watch you struggling with something, going through something, I take in the full picture of it. And it kind of removes myself out of the equation. Like, okay, he's struggling with this. You're having issues with certain things. It puts me in a better, maybe you can even help me articulate it. It helps me to position myself better in how to minister, pray, help, that I don't go, well, he's doing this to me, and making it about me. I separate it. I can understand and look at it. You and I, at the end of the day, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. When we're in heaven, we are not going to be married to each other. You know, we can get, that can be for another episode. But at the end of the day, we've talked about this before. We're not doing that relationship right. So if I can start from the premise of that and not take it personally, I'm better positioned then as your spouse to help you maneuver through things. Does that make sense? You know.
Yes, and I think that this comes down, the last thing I'll add to this is humility. That if we come to the conversation with humility, most of the time, the tough conversations, we don't come with humility. We come with pride of defensiveness.
Right, that's a great word added on to what I'm,
Or we come with unworthiness, right? So everything you say, like if you tell me, you know what, Mark, I don't feel like you're really engaged with me right now. It goes into a, woe is me, I'm a terrible husband. It's like, if I humble myself, it's like, all right, I hear that. I hear that. I'm not hearing, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm hearing she's hurting. See the difference? It's like, if I come and I humble myself and I'm listening to you, I hear what you're saying from your heart. So if you say, Mark, you are not paying attention to me, if I'm not in a humility state, I'm hearing you stink as a husband. If I'm in humility, I hear my wife is hurting and I need to wake up and awaken to that.
That's good. Thank you. That just took what I said and took it to a whole new level.
So this is all about it's all about establishing safety.
That's good, babe. Yeah.
So whenever I'm working with a consulting situation, whether I'm working with a couple, a church situation, or whatever, I've got to move the church or move the couple into this safety. I got to encourage them. We got to get safe. We got to stop throwing the stones. We got to start coming to the table and talking to each other. So this leads me into the second area, which is if we're going to heal these passivity and control issues, we got to learn how to have fruitful conversations. We got to learn how to talk and listen. So spending time together as a couple isn't, just for enjoyment. Those times together are our time to practice talking through the things that we need to talk about to grow together. That it's like, we're not going to leave the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about it, but we're going to keep learning how to talk and listen. You're going to go in a terrible direction if you come to the conversations going, well, you didn't hear my point last time, so I'm going to say it again, and I'm just going to keep trying to be right and win the argument. If that's your goal, you're not going to get anywhere. So I encourage couples, what we need to do is we need to talk about our frustrations and what we struggle with in empowering ways. I love the term empowered, disempowered. When we're disempowered, I just imagine like armor just falling off of us. We have no the power's been stripped from us. I love the term being empowered because the power that you have gets engaged, right? So if you're frustrated with me and saying you don't feel like I'm paying attention, if you just come at me and go, you're not paying attention and I'm sick of it, and people get to that point, understood, when you hit DEFCON levels. Yeah. But finding empowering ways of like, hey, I've noticed you've been really stressed lately and you're going through a lot or whatever. And I know that you don't seem like you're paying as much attention. I want to help you in that. Let's work on this together.
Isn't that I got to stop you though, babe, because I feel like that.
People don't know how to do that.
No. And this goes back to, I've talked about this. I always use this phrase. I've talked about it in other episodes. We do not have emotional, intelligent language skills.
Right.
We didn't have them, and it's not a condemning thing. It's a sobering thing. This is why we need to be reading. This is why we develop the materials we develop so that we can give you guys foundational stuff to pull from. So now when you're executing in relationship scenarios in real time, you now have stuff to pull from. It's why you need the word in you, because when you need to hear from God, it's planted in you and you pull from it and you know what he's speaking because he's already written it in his word.
Right.
So that's a huge thing, because as you're saying it, people go, oh, I didn't think to say it that way. we don't have any frame of reference. So sorry, I just had to stop you because I think it sounds beautiful as you're saying it, but most people don't even know that that's how they can frame it when you're when you're talking. And when you're in a blinding rage and you're mad about 10, 20, 30 years that's stockpiled behind you, you're like, yeah, okay, I don't know where I'm supposed to start with this.
So let's take a moment then and just share a couple things about communication. I think one thing is you want to have empowering discussions where you're talking about things in movement forward. To use a biblical term, redemptive ways. Redeeming is a biblical word of to buy back. Jesus bought us back to bring us back. So there's taking us into him, moving us forward, right? We need to find out ways of like, how are we going to, let's talk about this so we can move forward together in a healed way, in a better way. Second thing I think of is the word invitation. We want to have discussions where we're creating invitations. So if I'm frustrated that you're not spending time with me and we're not spending enough time together, and I'm frustrated about that, I could come to you and go, we don't spend enough time together. And I want to do this, right? And you'll feel bad. And then maybe we'll have some discussion, but it won't produce the fruit. But if I go, you know what? I miss time together. And how about if every Friday afternoon we cut out at this time and we do this? I really want to do that. Is that something you want to do? Because I miss that. Now we're empowering our discussions.
And may I say this too? I love that. And I think you note takers too, write that down. How can we create invitations? Because at the end of the day, we're all in marriages that are pressing, marriage is good, bad, and the ugly, okay? And we're all wanting to grow. Those of you tuning in, you're wanting to grow and go to the next level. And I think, we've often used the term about the paddle, right? We're in a ping pong match, but someone has to put it down. Someone has to make the choice.
Someone has to put down the dodgeball.
That goes back to the humility part that you were talking about. Someone has to make the choice because we're in that pride stage, especially in marriage. I'm not going to, well, he needs to. No, someone has to. Someone has to soften and say, I'm going to put it down, drop that, be humble, have the humility you're talking about, and create the invitation. So anyways, I just wanted to put that in there.
So to take it a step further in understanding conversations, let me tell you what your battleground is. For the one with control issues, you will have as a driving force fear. So when you have conversations, fear will often be a motivator. And so when fear is a motivator, it's like, we don't talk, we don't spend time together, and if we don't do something, our marriage is going to be over. So there's this anxious, urgent, panic, pressure. Now, we need to be sober, but sober isn't under fear pressure, because if I'm under fear, or if you're under fear, we can't see straight. We lose our sobriety.
Right, and sober is clear thinking.
Okay, so right here, right down the middle is sobriety. Fear takes you out of sobriety and into an altered state of panic, edginess,
can make you,
anger.
Crazy decisions, saying crazy things you can't take back.
You know what? We don't spend any time together. So that's showing, okay, this isn't going to get me anywhere. I need to get to sobriety so I can still talk about the tough things. You can still say, hey, if we don't make this change, I don't think our marriage is going to make it. You can say that without being in fear. Now, on the other side of the spectrum is the passive place, which is the narrative is avoidance. There's a fear here that says, we got to deal with this. I don't know what I'm going to do. Fear also is on the other side too. Creating avoidance. I don't want to deal. So when you come into conversation, those two factors are going on. One person, usually the female, is in high demand of change, and the male is like, if he was honest, how can I just get this conversation to just end so I can just watch TV or relax? Because I'm tired and I can't handle this. Right. This is too scary and it's uncomfortable, right? So those two factors are coming into play. So the fear puts you in an altered state of mind where you're not thinking straight. The avoidance puts you in an altered state of mind too. And this is very, very dangerous because for the man, he has an avoidance of pain. He doesn't want to face pain, deal with pain. He doesn't have tools and references for it. So the passivity is an escape. So passive, here's the problem. Here's the problem with this engagement. is a passive man does not allow himself to feel the pain of his wife.
So good.
Because if he feels the pain of his wife, then he says, I'm a failure. And then he goes down all these self-rejecting patterns. So what he does quite often is, if he's a Christian man, he'll say, well, she's nagging me, coming at me, so I'm going to stay quiet because I don't want to respond in anger, right? But really, it's a cloaked way of him hiding and not dealing with her, because he says, well, I'm not dealing harshly with her back. So my silence is a great response, but it's actually very deadly. So their silence fuels the pain, and the silence feeds the passivity, which creates an altered state of consciousness where they're in another land and they're in another world. Passivity is like an opiate. When you take an opiate drug, you go into an altered state. You know, I mean, I've said this before, to deal with some foot pain, took a low level of opiate painkiller, right? And it's like, ooh,
Baby, I'd like to stay in this place, right?
When you go into passivity, there is an opiate-like state of consciousness that changes. And this is the state. The state is, I don't feel what's really going on. So we ran into this in pastoring a lot because we really worked hard with the men and their passivity issues. And they would have these moments where God would move strongly and they would say amazing things. And at the next breath, they're like in a coma when you need them, out for the count, not paying attention.
Very true.
In relational settings.
Very true.
And it's like a drug that kicks in gear and just puts him in a coma and puts it out. This war is very real. And then the enemy keeps him in that posture. And then when it's time, the woman in her fear, in her altered state, she's not in her sobriety, because she's not in a place of prayer. She's lost her understanding of how she can help and empower him and speak to him in empowering ways. And so this collision hits him, and what does he respond with? Number one response. I shared this in the video, pity, unworthiness, but the big thing that comes out is anger. Right? You don't know what I've been through, all this, and makes it about himself.
You don't know how my work is. I have a hard day. Right.
She backs off, he goes back into his cave, and the cycle continues, right? So we both got to get out of the opioid state and get sober. So the goal of conversation, we first said safety, but now we got to learn how to have conversations. And I want to produce sobriety. I think that we are avoiding dealing with our own pain and dealing with our spouse's pain. And I am sick and tired of how Christianity is conditioning people to avoid pain. It comes out in our teaching. It comes out in our theology. It comes out in our constant busyness in church. We are training people to avoid the pain issues of their heart and the real problems that are going on. In the name of what? I still don't know, because we're chasing after something where we're selling out our birthright for cheap food, when in reality, God's called our marriage to be the central place of where God manifests his glory out of. And I'm sorry, at the end of the day, we're giving our marriages fumes. We're not giving it the full energy it needs, right? So that's a long explanation. So when I talk to you, there is a voice inside of me that will want to say, you've had a long day. Why do I have to deal with
your
this?
Self-talk?
Inside.
Okay.
And in you will come a voice.
He has no idea what I've gone through without my day.
Of intensity and stress. And this millions of problems that I've been thinking about.
Yep.
And those two things, if they're not shifted, instead of meeting together in conversation, because healthy conversation brings you to a higher level. Because I got to feel your pain. I got to get out of my opioid state of passivity. I need to feel exactly what you're feeling. I need to look into your eyes, see the pain, watch the tears, and respond to it. Yeah. And for most men, that's the scariest thing. So, safety and helpful conversations, we spent probably the most time on that. The next ones I'm going to go through quicker.
Go for it.
I think number 3, we have to stop equating failure with you being a failure.
Yeah, that's
We
really
don't
good.
learn in marriage. We don't learn in marriage only through our successes. We learn through our mistakes. And I don't know how to get around that, folks. We have to start learning. So the way we learn is recognize, we have to separate out failure. Failure is an event. It's not a person. Because we go, I'm a failure. No, you may have had a failure. And I think failure is sometimes too intense of a word because it speaks of this like finality.
Well, instead of
even recognizing,
failure, like, oh, I haven't done it right. I screwed up.
and we don't make those times productive because actually we don't know how to do that with God. We don't know how to like, we fall short. We don't know how to process that with God because we've not been taught. So for a man especially, if we tell a man, you're not stepping up to the plate, immediately it hits the failure trigger. He's a failure, you're a failure. That's why he manifests self-pity. No, nothing's good enough. I can never do anything right. Because that failure thing's kicking.
Well, don't you feel like a lot of that comes out of, the one thing that I know has happened a lot in my family is the past is the past. And at the result bottom of those two scenarios is you are struggling to what it looks like to implement going forward. You don't have the answers, so
you don't want to deal with it.
You don't want to deal with it. You don't have the answers. I don't know how to do this, so it happened.
Right.
It happened, or
right.
like you're saying, the victim posture of I'm no good.
Right. It's true. So I think that's something I had to change because if I hear failure, you're a failure, I'm now under condemnation. I can't see anything. Now I can't see what I actually need to see and need to do to make change. I am focused only on the sin and the failure. And I can't see the repentant, God says in every way he makes a way of escape. He's an redemptive God. There's always a way to freedom. So if you ever feel trapped, that's just a lie. There's always a decision. There's always a way. But we have to dig deep and we got to get out of this failure mentality to look at what's possible here. What is my wife really saying? Let me disconnect failure and let me hear what she's saying so we can really make changes.
Right, which I think brings us perfectly sliding into the next point of, in conversation, both people should not be allowed. There should be non-negotiables that as you're moving in this, okay, we need new ground rules and how we're going to move forward. And I think both men and women, because we've heard this across the board. Well, what happens? They shut down. They say nothing. That can't be tolerated anymore.
Right.
You're not allowed to say nothing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think, because we've hammered this over and over, the power of your voice, if people could just understand that. It can crush a home, but it can also bring life.
Yeah, in a relational setting, marriage setting, family setting, especially when there's, key interactions going on, I think there needs to be a rule. I'm not a fan of tons of rules, but one rule in this battleground is important. You're not allowed to shut down and say nothing. At the worst case scenario, say, I'm struggling right now to think of what to say and I'm having a hard time, but I want to. You're not allowed to say nothing because that nothing continues the pattern of passivity. It continues the pattern that you fall into. Now, it doesn't mean you're allowed to say anything. It means that I've got to learn how to process with my words what's going on in my heart.
Because I think, and responses show value.
That's right. That's right.
Responses of, okay, all right, I hear you. I don't know what, like you're saying, I don't know what to say, but I want to know what to do.
Yep.
It shows that you are valuing what's happening.
That's right.
Doing nothing is just breaking the other person's heart more and more and more.
Killer. It's one of the biggest killers is when somebody's in pain and someone says and does nothing when they have the power to do so.
Yeah.
That's important to know too. Okay, so in the conversation, number 5 is we want to get to a place of agreement. Okay, so we can't get ticked off, and I've mentioned this in past episodes, if we haven't established agreement. So if we're having the honest conversation, talking about the problems honestly, having this back and forth, you can't say nothing. What's the agreement? And the agreement could be, you know what? My work schedule is going to change. I'm not allowed to work nights anymore. Or
You're not allowed to.
When I come home and we sit down, I'm not going to be on my phone.
Yeah.
When we go out to dinner, I'm not going to be checking emails. Whatever. If we're going to a kid's event, there's these things that go, we're in agreement, this has to change. And we want this. Do you want this? I want this. Sometimes you got to check, make sure that they want it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to do this?
Yeah,
right?
that's very
and
true.
if you're tuning into Marriage for Overcomers, you probably want it. So, but it's good to process that out. Okay, so, but now number 6, where we got to, practically speaking, we got to deal with this control issue. The control issue is, what's the fear? That needs to be a part of the conversation. This is a fear that drives me, that I don't want to, and how can we work together? So I am a part of working together with you to help you in your fears and in mine. We work together. We are one. So that's safe conversations. Then there has to be a release of control. So, wives, this is difficult because you have to release your husband to God. You have to surrender some of those areas and recognize it's not going to be done perfect.
Right,
It's not
especially
gonna be-
when he's saying, I want to do this.
Yep.
Let me.
It's not
do
going to be
this."
done your way,
Right.
in your timing, in your pattern. There may be gaps in some follow through.
Diapers may not look very cute in the beginning. And you know what? If he doesn't put it on properly, then he has to clean the poop.
That's a life example. So I think that's this is like two people coming together to do this. The more we're able, in the beginning, usually like it's one doing more of the work, but eventually the other one's got to meet them. And that's where you're really going to start to see the breakthrough. It's like, let's work together on this.
Good.
But I find that these are some practical ways that say, okay, let's make some movement forward. We want to change our marriage and we want to move in a better direction.
I think it's awesome.
And so I don't want to be defensive. I want to humble my heart and I want to continue to be humble. And I think one of the ways that the humility can manifest is my job is not to fix you.
Right.
Your job is not to fix me. My job is not to change you. Your job is not to change me. Only God can do that. My job is to serve you. So take 30 days and ask God, how can I serve my spouse? And see what he says.
Yeah, that's good.
How could you go wrong in that?
Right.
Because now we're talking about empowerment. Now you're fueling the heart of who your spouse really is versus being focused on all the junk that irritates you. And that's usually what happens in marriage. We're so highly focused on the junk, we can't see the gold that's on the other side of this garbage that we need to just plow through.
Absolutely.
So anyways, we hope this has been a help to you. Send us your questions. We look forward to future episodes as we help your marriage to be an overcoming marriage. God bless you guys.
Blessings, everyone.